Hi, everyone. Welcome to another week of Angela Alston Astrology, where we look at the chart for the upcoming week and what is going on. So we're going to be unlocking the creative potential of October 22nd through the 28th, 2003. Let me get my slideshow going. Here we go. And before I get started, please remember to like and subscribe. It really helps my channel grow. And contact me with your relationship question for my upcoming podcast. I'm doing a podcast, hopefully starting very, very soon. And I would love to give you a free horary, a reading. We can even do it live, have it recorded if you're into that. For the podcast, put the subject of the email podcast so that I know it's not a horary question. And for folks who aren't as familiar with horary, you do not have to have your birth date or your birth time or that of your partner. So it's a little bit easier. And send those in to Angela Alston Astrology at gmail.com. All right, so this week, here is where the planets are at. We begin the week, and that's October 22nd, 12:01 a.m. Pacific time, and end the week on the 28th, 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. So the sun begins the week in Libra at 18 degrees 37 minutes and ends the week at 5 degrees 35 minutes Scorpio. So this week we have the beginning of the Scorpio season. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The moon begins at 0 degrees 32 minutes Aquarius, ends at 11 degrees 23 minutes Taurus. We have a partial lunar eclipse on the 28th, which we'll also get into. And the week begins with Mercury ingressing into Scorpio, 0 degrees, 0 minutes, a fresh new slate. And ends the week at 11 degrees, 24 minutes Scorpio. Venus in Virgo is traveling from 12 degrees Virgo to 19 minutes, 16 degrees. Mars in Scorpio is traveling 6 degrees, 52 minutes to 11 degrees, 41 minutes. Jupiter in Taurus is retraveling 12 degrees, 6 minutes to 11 degrees, 10 minutes. It is retrograde. And finally, Saturn in Pisces is retraveling 0 degrees, 39 minutes, 0 degrees, 32 minutes. It is retrograde itself. And so this week we find the Sun, Mercury, and Mars all in Scorpio. So what we're going to talk about this week is spend a little time sort of unpacking Scorpio. And then we're going to hit on the Earth trine between the benefics, Jupiter and Venus. And then talk about the intense opposition that's in the sky that includes Mercury, Mars, and the Sun in opposition to Moon and Jupiter, with Uranus, sort of in the neighborhood. And then finally, end on the lunar eclipse, which is happening at the very end of the week, October 28th. So let's get into it. Scorpio season begins, the spooky season. In traditional astrology, Scorpio is ruled by Mars, and it's ruled by Pluto in modern astrology. Now, Scorpio is the feminine nocturnal domicile of Mars. In the traditional system, each planet rather, had two manifestations, two domiciles, the daytime and the nighttime. And of course, the daytime, the masculine and diurnal face of Mars is Aries. So what's the relationship between Aries and Scorpio? They do have something in common. You know, certainly they have the same ruler within the traditional system. Aries is a cardinal fire sign. It is an initiatory sign, the first sign of spring, of the new year. It is a very quick moving energy on to the next challenge. It's a very hopeful, youthful. It has come out of the waters of Pisces, reborn. It is the cosmic child. Scorpio, however, is fixed water. It's water that does not move. Scorpio holds. Things sink and are preserved forever in the muck. Now, still water, still pools are very divinatory. The gods can speak, the oracles can speak through them. But still water is also poisonous water. Energy needs to move. It needs to release. It needs to flow. Or it can become very volcanic. It can build up in a way that is very dangerous. And so on the one hand, we have Aries, and it operates in the bright light of day. It is the beginning of spring, and it fights on the open battleground. It fights with a spear, with a shield, with its fists. It fights with man-made tools. It takes the offensive. Scorpio, on the other hand, it is also warrior energy. We'll talk a little bit about the myth, but it comes from the underground. Its tools are not sword and spear. It is guarded by monsters, Cerberus and the other guardians of the underground. It, rather than open warfare, it's more of a psychological warfare, rather than taking the offensive in a very blatant way. It is extremely defensive and extremely strategic. Scorpio energy has the wisdom of death. And that's a wisdom that Aries just doesn't have. So to really understand the Scorpio archetype and why Pluto was assigned to it, we really have to meet Pluto. And to meet Pluto, you have to meet Hades. Hades was the original Pluto. Pluto is a name that was an epithet that was given to Hades, and then the Romanization of the god, kind of amalgamon. Hades became Pluto. But Hades is the eldest son of Titans, Kronos, who we know as Saturn, and Re, a fertility goddess. Hades is the grandson of Uranus, the sky god. And Hades is brother to Zeus and Poseidon, who we call Jupiter and Neptune. And he's also brother to Demeter, Hera, and Hestia. Now, Hades fought the Titans and his father, including his father, along with his brothers, side by side with his brothers, Zeus and Poseidon. And they toppled them. And this is one of the pieces that goes into Scorpio, signified by Mars, Hades. Hades was a warrior. He was a formidable opponent. Well, once the Titans had been toppled by the brothers, the brothers divided the world among them. Zeus, Jupiter got the skies. Poseidon got the seas. Poseidon, Neptune got the seas. And Hades, Pluto, got the underworld. All of the dead and all of the riches from the soil and beneath the ground. Hades' name roughly translates etymologically to the hidden one. And he ruled the underworld strictly, jealously guarding what was his. But Hades is not the god of death. He is the lord of the underworld. The god of death is Thanatos. Hades was not known and was never portrayed as cruel or sadistic. In ancient myth, he was portrayed in a very impassive way. He was stern, implacable, and he maintained a balance between the living and the dead. He kept the dead, and there are a few stories of folks who were able to escape from Hades or leave Hades. Leave the underworld. His name in ancient world, people didn't want to say it out of fear of getting his attention. Everybody knew that they would come to Hades eventually, that he would be their lord eventually. But that time, they wanted to put off, much as we do now, as long as possible. So rather than speaking his name, he was given a lot of epithets. And one of them was Pluton, the rich one, the one who spreads wealth from below. Oh, and there's also, actually, let me go back to that. I'll stay on this slide. There's actually very few stories about Hades himself, again, because the ancients did not want to draw his attention. But one which we know very well is capturing of Persephone. Now, Persephone was his niece, Demeter's daughter, a beautiful young woman, and she caught his attention, and he grabbed her and brought her to the underworld. In some stories, most stories, it was against her will, and he raped her. Demeter was inconsolable, and in her grief and in her rage, she caused all the living things to die. And this was the origin myth of winter. Now, Zeus, Jupiter, made a compromise where Persephone could come back to Demeter, but because Hades had tricked her into eating a pomegranate seed, she had to return to him for 3 months out of the year. And this is our winter season. Scorpio season is about October 23rd to November 23rd. It is the last fall month, and it is when the leaves have fallen. It is the beginning of the cold. It is a time when traditionally there have been, well, Halloween falls during Scorpio season. It's a witchy time. And all of these threads, Hades, being the unseen, the hidden one, the name that we shall never speak, feed into the Scorpio archetype. Scorpio is one of those signs which is kind of woefully misunderstood, in my opinion, and by culture and sometimes by astrologers. Scorpio, if anything, it is secretive, fascinated by power and powerlessness, and deeply compassionate. It understands that humans are mortal creatures and is fearless in a way when it comes to looking at the dark side of life. Things that a lot of people try to avoid or live as if they don't exist. Scorpio is very interested in the taboo. And again, in power dynamics. Scorpio is about control. And you see that with the myth of Hades. He was incredibly controlling of what he ruled. And what he ruled was a world that mortals could never see. It's what is underneath. And so with Mercury this week entering Scorpio, we also have Mercury in Scorpio controls the flow of information. And it's one of those signs, and one of the few signs that loves secrets. And secrets, sometimes get a bad rap, but they can be very powerful things. They can be very empowering things. Secrets exist for your soul alone. There's no such thing as a secret that you share. And once you've shared it, it is no longer a secret. Secrets can be your own private treasures. Mercury in Scorpio is also an incredible detective. They can excavate the past in a way that is absolutely forensic and get to the heart of the matter. They can manage complexity. And in fact, they love complexity. They don't believe in easy answers. They're always digging. The truth is, it's out there, it's down there. It might be ugly. They're not afraid. They're not afraid of that. There's very little that Scorpio is actually afraid of, except for losing control. Being in a position where they are disempowered, where they're not the ones calling the shots. Scorpio is an energy in relationships, which is wildly loyal. That's one of the areas where I think Scorpio is so misunderstood. You know, there's this idea that Scorpio is very promiscuous, and it's simply not true. If a Scorpio is promiscuous, it's because they're unfulfilled. A Scorpio who is fulfilled, even remotely fulfilled in their relationship, holds on so tightly. And in fact, in my experience, Scorpios are people who will often hold on to a relationship long after its expiration date. And they will stay with somebody despite abuse, despite addiction, despite things that would send other energies, other people running. When they give their heart to somebody, it is a very intense bond. And one of the things I think that is under noticed about Scorpion energy, and I've always said this, Scorpios make the most incredible parents. They not only provide for the material and emotional needs of their child, they provide for the psychic and spiritual needs. It is such a deeply nurturing, loyal, and truly beautiful energy. Oh my God, I'm gonna cry. Well, welcome to Scorpio season. I hope that you use this time in a way that is empowering for you, that you get to the bottom of some of your own mysteries, and that you embrace yourself in all of your complexity. And now we can talk about the Earth trine between Jupiter and Venus. So we start this week with the greater and the lesser benefic. The greater benefic being Jupiter, the lesser being Venus, united in an earthy trine. Jupiter is in Taurus, Venus is in Virgo. The week begins with the trine fading, but still at the exact same degree. It's just a few minutes. It perfected yesterday. Now, Venus at 12 degrees Virgo is very close to where Mercury was during the grand Earth trine earlier in September, and this was on September 23rd. So this is a continuation of that storyline, with Venus coming in to where Mercury was. So I hope you use that time very intentionally to work that trine. Now it stays within the 3-degree range, even though it's fading, until mid-afternoon on October 24th, so about 2:30 Pacific time. So the real window of opportunity for this energy is October 19th through the 24th. And this is a kind of practical magic, a channel where you have wisdom and desire hand in hand. What you want chimes with your highest good. Venus in Virgo is not the flashy, Venus in Leo. Venus in Virgo is Earth goddess energy. It's practical, fertile, very chill, and very useful. And then Jupiter in Taurus, that's really resourceful, understanding the value of the material world and how to manipulate that to achieve your dreams and goals. Of course, Jupiter is still retrograde. And retrograde planets, you can never exactly know how they're going to act. But overall, I think this is a very positive thing. You know, trines are of the nature of Venus. And here we have Venus and Jupiter united. I hope that you work this trine. Now, say it again, you'll get tired of me saying it, but trines can pass absolutely unnoticed. You really have to have intention. But that's really true of almost anything with astrology. You know, you'll have people who say, "Oh, I didn't feel that at all." Well, you won't if you're not paying attention to it. I mean, there's so much in the world that goes outside of your purview because it's not where you're looking. You know, that idea of you gaze into the void and the void gazes back. Well, you gaze into abundance and abundance gazes back. You gaze into your heart and your heart gazes back. And so this trine, it's an open energy, and anybody, I mean, every human being has all the planets, all the signs, all the degrees somewhere in your chart. It's available to everybody with intention. However, it will be especially resonant for those who have earth and water signs in the 9 degrees to 15 degree range. Next up, the moon. The moon is important this week. There is a partial lunar eclipse on October 28th at 1:24 p.m. Pacific time at 5 degrees 9 minutes Taurus, with the sun, of course, in Scorpio. This is a full moon, partial lunar eclipse. It is the last eclipse in the Scorpio Taurus, on the Scorpio Taurus sort of axis spectrum. Eclipses happen in pairs, and they happen over a period of about 18 months in that same spectrum. And this storyline began in November 2021 with a lunar eclipse in Taurus. There was a solar eclipse in Taurus in April of 2022, a lunar eclipse in Scorpio in May of 2022, a solar eclipse in Scorpio in October of 2022, a lunar eclipse in Taurus in November of 2022, and a lunar eclipse in Scorpio in May of 2023. And now we have the final in this series, a lunar eclipse in Taurus. And now this is the final in this series for 9 years. This series will repeat 9 years from now. And so with eclipses and eclipse series, it can be really helpful to kind of see what was going on in your life 9 years ago, 18 years ago, 27 years ago, if you're old enough to go on the Wayback Machine. And know that whatever is going on right now, whatever storyline this is a part of, you'll return to it in your life. These themes will return in about 19 years, 18 years and 6 months to be exact, because eclipses work in that kind of a cycle. And for many, this is going to pass as a big nothing burger. You know, that's the way it is. Like I was saying before, eclipses and almost anything else only impact you if, one, you're paying attention, and two, if the planetary energy is relevant to you in a way. And it's relevant to you if you have planets or angles that are within the kind of 2 degree to 8 degree of Scorpio Taurus, then this should really have some resonance. The idea with lunar eclipses is that they bring about ineluctable endings. They clear the slate to allow space in your life for something new to begin. What happens during an eclipse, and it doesn't have to be on the day of the eclipse, you know, sometimes it can be as far as 6 months away. And some astrologers will say even longer. But anyway, it's non-negotiable. You know, you don't look back. You can only really look forward. Lunar eclipses, because they really involve the moon, impact relationships. And often sometimes the beginnings, but often the endings of relationships. So kind of see what's going on, you know, in your life right now. And I'd be very interested to hear if this eclipse series has been meaningful for you. Now we're ending the week again on the 28th, a few hours from the partial lunar eclipse, with a very intense opposition. And here you'll see there's Mercury and Mars exactly conjunct at 11 degrees. The sun is here. And usually I say that there is a 3-degree, you know, orb of influence. With the sun, it is remarkably larger. Because the sun is such a powerhouse. But one of the most important things that I want to impart about the sun being involved here is that it's causing Mercury and Mars to be combust. To be combust is to be within about an 8-degree range of the sun. And right now, both of them are 6 degrees away from the sun. Planets that are combust are degraded planets. They are planets that are overpowered. And another way of interpreting this is that they are working in the dark, covertly. You cannot see them yet. And so we have Mercury combust in Scorpio. Mercury in Scorpio likes covert action to begin with. We were talking about its love of secrets. This is Mars in Scorpio can be ruthlessly effective. And when you have a degraded Mercury and Mars working together in opposition to the moon, and the moon in mundane charts isn't about the feelings, it means the people. People. And Jupiter, where you could have a lot of people. And then over here, in Taurus, we have Uranus. And Uranus is far enough away. I mean, it's 10 degrees away from the 11-degree mark of Jupiter and the moon. But it is still in the neighborhood. And considering how intense these energies are, the Jupiter, the sun, Mars, Mercury, the moon, it is such a mashup in opposition to each other. And so I wanted to kind of break down some of the dynamics that are happening here. You have moon conjunct Jupiter on a personal level. That is inflated feelings. On a mundane level, it can be a lot of people. Moon opposite Mars indicates bodily hurt, accidents, physical pain. Moon opposite Mercury. The mind and heart are at odds, not seeing things clearly because too emotionally biased. Jupiter opposite Mars, explosions, huge blow-ups. Jupiter opposite Mercury, self-righteousness, extremism. Mercury conjunct Mars, accidents, car and transportation accidents, explosions, fighting. And again, Mercury and Mars are still debilitated by the sun. They are combust. They are working in the shadows. I see this as a very dangerous sky. It's inviting covert, aggressive action against the people. And this is happening the same day as our partial lunar eclipse. And I'm not into fear astrology at all. However, when I feel into this chart, it does not feel good. This would be a time, and it's building all week. You know, it gets, Jupiter and Mars get within the 3-degree range of influence by Monday. So this is a tension-filled environment that's building all week. This is a week to be cool, to step down, and certainly next Saturday to be safe. If you can be at home, be at home. This is a situation where I really hope that I am exercising excessive caution and that we talk next week and absolutely nothing came of it. But I would not be doing my job if I didn't warn you. This is an ugly sky. It's a violent sky. So to recap, the Sun and Mercury ingress into Scorpio. Mars is already there. This week really brings the Scorpio. The week starts with a mellow Earth trine between Venus and Jupiter that extends the storyline from September 23rd, where we had a grand trine in Earth with Jupiter, Mercury, and the Moon. The week ends with a partial lunar eclipse in Taurus, 5 degrees, 9 minutes, the last eclipse of the Taurus Scorpio series. It'll come back in 9 years. And then the week ends with a major opposition, a mashup involving the Sun, Mercury, and Mars in Scorpio, a debilitated Mercury and Mars, opposing the Moon and Jupiter, with Uranus hanging out in that neighborhood too. This has been brewing all week. Be cool, be safe, and thank you so much for listening. Before we go, reminder to contact me with your relationship question for my upcoming podcast at angelaalstonastrology@gmail.com. I appreciate you so much. Have a great week, everyone.